Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to another, well, I don't know if this is another video, a new video where we're going to be going over the judge test correctly. So if you guys missed it, we talked about it on our podcast, sort of went through the questions before everything was graded and all that, and based on the results, we didn't do very well. So, and you guys kind of saw that on the podcast as we went through and sort of realized some things we probably got wrong and stuff like that. But yeah, we're going to go through each question and basically give the correct answer for it all. And before we get into that, also, if you guys are looking for any Forcible singles or sealed product, including pre-orders for the new set coming out in January, be sure to click the link in the description below for Happy Little Hug Factory. They have a lot of awesome stuff on there, including a Buylist for Forcible singles. So be sure to click that link in the description to help support the channel. So I'm here with Ronan. So do you want to introduce yourself to everyone?
Yep. How's it going, guys? My name's Ronan Morris. I'm a level 1 judge from Australia. I took the level 0 test just to see what it was like. I scored 100%. So I was just here to run you guys through the answers, the correct answers, to just help everyone better understand like the correct rulings and stuff.
Yeah. So this will be much more informative, and this will be the much more informative version of what we did before, and what you want to actually show people, especially people who are looking to maybe become judges who maybe missed it this time around and want to know why, or how to better prepare for next time, like what they missed and stuff. So yeah,
definitely. I think it's a lot better when everyone is able to see where they went wrong and why, and improve themselves.
Yeah, and so I don't know what the correct answers are for all of these, so I'm going to find out which ones I actually got wrong right now. So we'll go ahead and start with question 1, which was, which of the following symbols indicates an automatic object? And the options are either a colon, semicolon, brackets, an arrow, or parentheses. Now this one I know I put arrow, and I brought up that I did not like the wording of automatic object, but what was the correct answer for this?
Well, the correct answer was D for the arrow. Okay. I think the wording is a little bit strange, considering in the CR, automatic object isn't really used that much.
Yeah, that was one thing I was confused about, because I did look up automatic object in the CR, and there might have been another reference, but the first reference I saw was the object being the card itself that has an automatic ability, and that really threw me off of what.
An automatic object in the CR is used to reference cards with trigger, which is a wanderer mechanic for the stanch handbys. So I thought it was a bit strange, but I guess they just meant the automatic abilities, or maybe they're updating some of the wording soon. But yeah, essentially the little arrow symbol there is used to represent automatics. So if a card's ever asking about automatic abilities or something, you just look for that little arrow, and that clearly identifies those.
Yeah, and that was one of my favorite changes that they had done, was adding that arrow rather than just doing it based on wording and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think having the little symbols for it is always good. Just anything that helps players easier be able to look at that and say, yep, that's definitely an automatic ability.
Yeah.
Which you can now tell because of the new templating, which is really nice, I think.
Okay, so that one ended up being... I was worried about that one being wrong because of that wording, but I'm glad I got that one right, at least.
That's a good question.
Alright, so question 2 was, what timing can cards without quick cast be played at through Speaker of the Eternal Knight's ability and Gil Lapis Rebel of Darkest Fire ability? And we don't have the images here, but you guys should all know what Sherry did, because that should still be, lingering around in your head.
Yeah.
And Gil, you're probably less familiar with. He has the ability, I believe the ability we're referring to was the one where he played the card from the removed area?
Yeah, I'll just get the card up really quick.
Okay.
But essentially, you pay X, and it gives you the ability to play target card from their removed area for the rest of the turn.
Yeah. And so the options were Speaker's ability allows the player to play the card outside of main timing, while Gil only allows to play the card with main timing. B is Gil allows the player... Gil Lapis's ability allows the player to play the card outside of main timing, while Speaker's only lets them play with main. C is both of them are quick cast, and D is both of them are main timing.
Yeah, so you sort of skipped over this question pretty quick in the first video, but I thought it's a sort of like really difficult to understand. So the correct answer here is A, where Sherry's allows you to play cards without quick cast outside of the main timing, and Gil Lapis's ability only allows you to play them at their correct timing. Now it's a bit of a tricky wording here. So essentially, because Sherry's ability specifically states for you to play it as part of the effect that allows you to ignore timing, but Gil Lapis's ability simply allows you to play the card for the rest of the turn, which means you still have to observe all the normal timing restrictions of the card. So, for example, if we use, say, Black Tears for Scheherazade, she's able to play that at quick cast timing. Whereas if we just use the same thing, we'll say Black Tears is in your opponent's removed area and you have Gil Lapis, you still have to only play the Black Tears during the main timing of your turn.
So this was an example of one that I misread, where I thought it was talking about the ability of the ruler and not the cards they were playing, and so I thought now that I reread that question part, that makes more sense. But my initial reaction, was quick cast because I was thinking of the abilities themselves.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, some of the questions are pretty specific in the wording, and even just like looking at these two abilities, you think they're the same thing, but there's some just real subtle differences in the wording of the effect that ends up making them fairly different. And I mean, it's not like many players will be familiar with Gil Lapis anyway. He wasn't played very much while he was still in New Frontiers. He's not played very much in Wanderer now that he's rotated. So I think, a lot of people would have been very unfamiliar with how that card works.
Yeah. And, so question 3 was, which of the following are true of the despair side of inverse resonators? And the options are, and you can choose multiple, its total cost is equal to the total cost of its hope side. Its total cost is 0. If moved from the field to removed area, it's returned to its hope side. And if moved from the field to the top of its owner's deck, it's returned to its hope side.
Yep, so correct answers for 3 was B, C, and D. So if a card in Force of Will does not have a printed cost, it's considered to have a total cost of 0. So the despair side's always the inverse side of the inverse resonators. So it doesn't have a printed cost up the top, so it's treated as having a total cost of 0. And if double-faced cards, if an inverse card specifically is on the despair side and it leaves the field, then it gets returned to the hope side. So that applies for both C and D for the removed area and the top of deck.
Yeah. And that one I know I got right because I like my inverse cards.
Especially because they're in New Frontiers at the moment, so people understand it.
Yeah, it's one of those few New Frontiers questions.
Yeah, one of the few.
Next up is so this little bit wordy one for one that Andy plays Final Battle, where X equals 8 to destroy all his opponent's resonators. He then moves to combat and attacks with Mage Dark Elf. In response, Nicole plays and resolves Alicera's Scholar Phenomena, which is a 3-cost quick cast, and when it enters the field, you remove a chant from your graveyard to your removed area, and then when it goes to the graveyard, you can play said chant. And so it asks, which of the following is an accurate representation of what happens when Alicera's resolves? And we'll just go to the correct answer on this one, so I don't have to read all that.
Yeah. So the correct answer here is B. So there's a few things that are going on in this question. So Final Battle applies a continuous effect to the opponent's field. So even resonators that enter after the Final Battle's resolved still have the debuff applied to them. So when Nicole plays the Allosaurus, it will die straight away. And then, so when a player receives priority in Force of Will, the very first thing that's checked is your rules processes, which checks for stuff like if a player's lost or won the game, if anything needs to be destroyed, or anything like that. So that gets checked immediately before any abilities happen. So the Allosaurus dies straight away. And then after those are all checked, then automatic abilities are put onto the chase. And because the Allosaurus died straight away, there's now 2 different abilities that need to go on. And if there's multiple abilities that trigger at the same time, the owner of those abilities can choose the order. So Nicole is able to decide which one she wants to resolve first after the Allosaurus dies.
Yeah, and so
it's a little bit complex there. It's a bit of a, really specific scenario. And there's a lot of different rules you need to know for that question.
Yeah, and it's once it plays out, I think it makes a lot of sense how it resolves. Just like, it's a very wordy thing, so there's a lot going on there. But and no one knows who Allosaurus is, so
yeah, some more Wonder cards.
Yeah, and Final Battle also.
Yeah. So yeah, essentially it just dies immediately, straight away, because it has 0 defense, and then because there's 2 separate abilities, the owner gets to choose the order. All
right. So next question we got: which of the following cards would be canceled by the Eternal Tower? Heteroclite Excalibur on an opponent's Shao Jing, which makes you pay 1 void more for chance. Final Battle with X equaling 3. Severing Winds being played so that it equals 0. Or Evil Elemental Uprising, which I forget now the wording of that, but yeah.
It's like it removes your opponent's graveyard from the game and it cannot be chased.
Correct, yeah. So what was the correct answer for this one?
Correct answers for 5 was A and D. So you could choose multiple for this one. So Shao Jing says that your opponents pay 1 more to play chance. It's important to note, so total cost just refers to the essentially the printed cost in the top left corner of the card. So when Shao Jing says your opponent pays 1 more, that's an additional cost. So it doesn't actually count towards the total cost of a card. So Heteroclite Excalibur still has a total cost of 1. We should probably say what Eternal Tower does. It counters spells your opponents play that have a total cost of 1 or less. So because Excalibur has a total cost of 1, it would get cancelled by the Eternal Tower. X costs do contribute to the total cost while the spell's on the chase. So Final Battle would be considered to have a total cost of 4 in that scenario, so it won't get cancelled. Severing Winds, played for 0 on the second card of an opponent's, is an alternative casting cost, which again does not modify the total cost of a card. So it's still considered to have a total cost of 4, even though you played it for a different amount. So it won't get cancelled. And Evil Elemental Uprising does get cancelled because automatic abilities are allowed to be played even after a card says it can't be chased. It's specifically exempted in the rules to say that, yes, even though the card says, card may say it cannot be chased, automatic abilities that trigger off that are still able to be placed on above that. So Evil Elemental Uprising would also get cancelled.
All right. For the record, I did have this one right, and then Oscar told me I was wrong. So awesome. So basically, yeah, printed or essentially the pre-cost.
Yeah,
before
it's essentially just
else,
the printed cost, and X does count towards the total cost when you set a value for X.
Okay,
it's pretty much just the rundown on that.
Cool, and so the Eternal Tower, or also a good way to, I assume, look at it is the way Wind Secluded Refuge used to work, where it doesn't use the chase, but it was able to stop Black Moonbeam, even though you couldn't.
Well, yeah, I mean, it does use the chase. It's just because automatic abilities are specifically exempted. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not being played, essentially, I guess is the correct term.
It's because it's not like a player action. You can think of it like that.
Yeah, it's just always there, floating around.
Yeah.
6 was, which of the following can Keys' call cancel? So this was a source of debate between us. What was the correct answer for this one?
All right, so the correct answer was A and C. So you could also choose multiple answers for this one.
Okay.
So Misty Dragon is delayed automatic. So Keys' call can only counter automatic abilities of Resonators, is what the card says. So Enforcer will, if a card refers to like just Resonators without saying anything about like what zone they're in, it defaults to referring to the field. So Keys' call essentially says counter target automatic ability of a Resonator in a field. So Misty Spirit's delayed automatic ability, which is the second part of its zero cost effect, is still considered to be created by a resonator in the field because it's created at the time Misty Dragon's ability is used while it's still on the field. So that the source is still remembered, even though Misty Dragon's left the field for the removed area. It still remembers that Misty Dragon was in the field at the time it was created. So that's able to be cancelled. And the other correct answer, C, Gem Beast automatic ability, even though it triggers when it moves to the graveyard in Force of Will rules, if a resonator moves from a field to a non-field zone and that triggers an automatic effect, it's considered to still be in the field when the ability is triggered.
Yeah, and that was something that was sort of I think someone mentioned it, and then it was sort of a realization of Misty Dragon. You could think of it as the ability is just sort of floating on the field after being created by a resonator. So even though it's removed from the game, the ability that was created by it as a resonator is still floating around. And Gem Beast is when it goes to the graveyard, not necessarily when it hits the graveyard. So it's still on the field as that process happens. So it made a lot more sense the more I thought about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and essentially a resonator played via stealth, which is a wanderer mechanic, is not considered an automatic ability. And Willful Samurai Spirit's automatic ability, because it triggers going from the hand to the graveyard, it's never actually on the field, so Kiz's Call can't cancel it because it defaults to targeting resonators on the field.
Yeah, and so that's something just good to remember in general for a lot of situations, is that how that resonator typing defaults to that as well.
Yeah, so if it doesn't say anything after it, it defaults to just resonators on the field.
All right. Next up, which of the following answers correctly describes the God's Art Azure Bonds of Alice, Girl of the Planet, which is the God's Art where you play it and you name a card and your opponent can't play that card as long as she is on the field.
Yep. So correct answer here would be B. So the card you're choosing is named upon the resolution of Alice's God's Art, because it's not a part of the process that you use to play abilities. It's the only thing you would do when you played it would be if it said target or choose modes or something, which you would do when you play it. But because it happens in the effect, you do it when it resolves and you select a card name. And then, no God's Art with the same name can be used multiple times throughout a game. So God's Arts are just based off the name, not where it comes from. So you can only use one Azure Bonds for the whole game.
And that works even if it's the same card, but hypothetically, if you had Lumia and blinked it would...
Yeah, even if it's the same physical card, if it's a different copy of the same card or anything, you can't use it multiple times because it just bases it specifically off the name. So it's once you use it, there's a reminder for the whole game. You can't use a God's Art named Azure Bonds again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one was a little bit easier, at least.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Next one, what is the correct order of steps when playing a spell or ability? And so this one's just nice because it's a good thing for people to remember because of how different rules processes work and all that. It's good just to know these types of orders. And so what was the correct answer for this?
Our correct answer here is A. So you choose whether to awaken first, and then after that you would choose options. So if a card said, for example, choose 2, and then it had a list of 3 different things you could choose from, you'd select those then. Then after that you choose targets, because targets would be based on the modes. If you selected a mode that targeted something, that changes whether you select that or not. So you choose targets after choose the modes, and then at the very end you pay all the costs associated with the spell or ability.
Yeah. And that one's pretty straightforward, and it sort of makes sense why it would be in that order and all that. But
it's a good thing to remember. Just as you said, if there's any sort of, it's good. It's just a good thing to know when you play cards.
Yeah. Yep. Next up, we got: at what point is an attacking resonator that's attacking a J resonator considered battling? So this is another one that I think we're going back and forth on.
Yeah, you were discussing it a bit in the previous video. So correct answer here is B. So it's immediately after a blocker or no blocker is chosen. So it says it in the CR section. It's in 804.5, and that's when it says the attacking J resonator is now considered to be battling. And then if there's a blocker or an attacked target, then that's considered to be battling as well at that point.
Yeah, that I forget what we ended up doing for that. Well, I know. I
don't think you all decided. I think you all had like different options. I think.
Yeah, but B makes sense because after the blocker is declared, then they immediately goes into the battling and all that stuff. But yeah, I think it was mainly between B and D, and just because of how wordy D was. But
yeah, and it was changed. It was changed a while back as well, as you said. After 0 was released, they changed the rules around a bit.
Oh,
regarding that.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
Next up, we got Andy controls Dragon Shrine Maiden and plays her Judgment Process, which is 1 cost of Judgment. He tries to use Maiden's Activate ability, which is tap, draw a card, in response to the Judgment, but Nicole says that he can't. Both players declare they have no responses until after the Judgment Process resolves and ask the judge to clarify what happens. What should the judge rule?
Yep, so the correct answer here is D. You are allowed to use abilities that rest your ruler in response to the judgment, and then they enter the field in the same orientation that they were in the ruler area. So there are a few rulers in Raya Cluster that do have that a rest ability to do something. For example, like Guild can search for a Gentle Breeze Elemental, that sort of stuff. But essentially because Judgment, your ruler being recovered for Judgment only matters when you actually like pay for the Judgment. It doesn't actually check again once it resolves. So you can declare Judgment, pay the costs, and then in response to your own ability, rest it to draw a card with Dragon Shrine Maiden, for example. And then when Judgment resolves, it doesn't care about the orientation anymore. And then it just enters the field rested.
Yeah. And so that's something cool to know, especially like you said, there's a couple rulers. Kirik can technically do it and stuff like that. So
yeah, it's Kirik, Raya is the Kirik, Raya, and Gil are the main ones I can think of. But it's always a cool thing to do. For example, if you're not worried about an opponent's resonator attacking into your J ruler, you can always just rest it to gain some extra value before you as your Judgment.
Yeah, and especially if your opponent's in this new format, if your opponent's playing one of the new rulers, they're not going to Judgment anytime soon, so you feel a lot safer doing that now.
Yeah, so if you feel safe, that's always a good trick to do. For example, if you're playing Guild, just to search out another Gentle Breeze Elemental.
Yeah.
Which is a really cool little trick you can do.
Next up, we got Andy plays Heavenly Fruit with only a Charlotte's Protector in hand. What sequence of events occurs as a result? And this was another one I think we went back and forth on.
Yeah, it's another one of those sort of in-depth things where you need to understand like how the priority works. So the correct answer is C. So when Heavenly Fruit resolves, you just resolve the text. So Charlotte's Protector goes to the graveyard first. And then, so remember back in I think it was question 4, I think, with the Allosaurus one. So you have to finish resolving whatever you do, and then you do rules processes, and then automatic abilities go on the chase. So you finish resolving Heavenly Fruit before the Charlotte's Protector's automatic ability happens. And Heavenly Fruit actually gets removed from the game because while it's on the chase, you apply its effects. So the replacement effect's now active, and then it moves from the chase to the graveyard and gets redirected to the remove from game zone because its own effect's active. And then after that, you check for automatic abilities and you put the Charlotte's Protector's order on the chase.
Yeah, I don't know why Joey was really against that, but
I understand what he was saying in the video. Like he said, it was it gets triggered, but it doesn't go on until after, I think he was saying. But
yeah, he's
it's
trying to say, yeah, it got inserted. The drawing happened like somewhere in the middle before Heavenly Fruit went away.
Yeah, I get what he's saying, but yeah, it's just another one. See, like all the answers are pretty similar. It's just slight ordering differences.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, don't particularly matter, but
it'll matter.
It's just
I wish it was maybe a different set of cards they chose that maybe matter a little bit more. Where like drawing a card could matter if the card that you're playing affects your deck or something like that before it resolves, for example. So there are situations where the order matters. This specific situation, it doesn't really matter too much.
Yeah.
All right. So next one, Andy controls Lumia and arrested Nidhogg. That was brought into turn by End of Days. He moves to the end phase and orders Lumia's automatic ability, targeting Nidhogg to resolve before End of Days. Which of the following will prevent Lumia from either removing Nidhogg from play or bring it back into play after it's been removed? And there can be multiple correct answers for this.
All right, so there's a lot of Wanderer cards in this question.
Yeah, let me go through in case people don't know. So Lumia obviously has the blink effect, targets a Rest or Resonator, moves it from game, then brings it back into the field. Nidhogg is just a dragon. End of Days, it brings a Resonator or a dragon into the field from the graveyard, and if it would go anywhere, it'd be removed from game instead from End of Days effect. And at end of turn, it's removed from game as well. And the cards from the answers, or the possible answers, is Dawn of Earth, which if a card would come into play anywhere outside of the person's hand, it doesn't enter the field, it just gets removed from game. Winds of Gold gives barrier to a player or J/Resonator, and Imul has a automatic ability to recover target rested Resonator.
Yeah, so I'll go over, or also correct answers were B and D. I'll go over End of Days last, because that's the most complex one. So essentially, Dawn of the Earth, the effect says if, as Colin said, if a Resonator would enter the field without being played from the hand, it gets removed instead. So Lumia's effect would remove the Nidhogg, and it would attempt to come back in, but it just gets removed again instead. Winds of Gold, giving Nidhogg barrier. So barrier only protects from the opponent of the Resonator's owner that it's on. So even though Nicole has given Nidhogg barrier, it's actually only stopping Nicole from targeting Nidhogg. So that would, Lumia's ability would still happen and remove Nidhogg and come back in. So that doesn't work. And Imul's ability does prevent Lumia from flickering it, because Lumia's ability says that you have to target a rested Resonator. So if you make it not a rested Resonator before it resolves, then the target's illegal and the effect won't happen. So that would stop it. So End of Days. Now, I don't particularly like this ruling. It doesn't make sense to me. And it's not really a ruling you can find in the CR. It's just sort of like, it's just one of those rulings where it's like, it's just how they say it is. And it's been passed down from the company to all the judges. So it's like an official ruling. But so essentially, because Lumia's ability says remove it from the game and put it back in, and the replacement effect of End of Days says if it would leave the field, remove it from the game, that only replaces like the first part of Lumia's ability. And so because it's going to the same zone anyway, because Lumia's attempting to remove it, but it gets removed instead, Lumia's ability still sees it in the remove from game zone and will bring it back successfully into the field. So that actually won't stop Lumia from flickering it.
So because she kind of technically targeted the card before, and then it gets replaced by End of Days, but because she targeted it, her effect still recognizes it to bring it back in.
Lumia wants it to go to the remove from game zone and then bring it back, and then End of Days says move it to the end of move it to the remove from game zone. So Lumia's ability still sees it in the remove from game zone, so it still brings it back. And you can find these rulings on the Force of Will Judge questions pages.
Yeah,
if you wanna.
That sounds like one of the, because there's this one and there's either one or two other questions that I'm not
Yeah.
Well, there's other ones, but those ones in particular, there's questions that I'm not too happy about being on here because it's not anything you could find by. You could read the CR front to back and not fully answer them. And from my understanding, there's at least like a question or so about that took a while for even the top judges to decide a ruling, and because it's not directly in the CR.
Even this question, like most of us judges like couldn't sort of come to a conclusion. So, forcible, like the company judges had to step in and say, this is how it works. And that's been passed down to players through the Facebook pages. But yeah, it's not really something you can find by reading the CR. I find it a bit unintuitive, to be honest. And I think I've seen a few other people say, well, they think it should just replace all of Lumia's ability. But it's only replaces part of it.
Yeah. Well, at least all those locals that are playing New Frontiers know how End of Days works.
Yeah, that classic New Frontiers card.
And that card that's banned in every single format, Lumia.
Yeah, it's got some banned cards and some Wanderer cards. So.
Next one. Which of the following scenarios immediately leads to an attacking resonator no longer being considered attacking? Scarlet's Agony with a legal target, which removes target attacking resonator from game, draw a card. Control of the attacking resonator changing. Losing its abilities, e.g. through Separation of Fate, which says target J resonator loses all abilities to end a turn. Or the attacking resonator dealing damage.
Alright, so correct answers for this one, which is 13, A and B. So Scarlet's Agony pretty explicitly says remove it from battle. So if something gets removed from battle, it's not attacking anymore. And if control of the attacking resonator changes, that also stops it being considered an attack. It stops the attack, essentially. Yeah. Losing its abilities doesn't affect the battle at all. It'd still be attacking. And the attacking resonator dealing damage, so that doesn't really affect it either. For example, if I had like a resonator that said pay 1 green, do 200 damage, even if I use that to do 200 damage to something while it's attacking, like it's just completely separate from the combat, so it has no effect.
Yeah. This one felt more like an L0 judge question.
Yeah, I think that was a solid question. But.
Which of the following keyword skills have game functionality in multiples, i.e. which of the following keyword skills stack? So this was the interesting one that I don't know if we did during the video, but I know at some point we had a discussion about it. And so the options are Flying, Limit, Drain, Pierce, and Bloodlust.
Yeah, so correct answers for this one were B and C, so Limit and Drain. So essentially what it means by it explains it like which of the following keyword skills stack. So Limit and Drain are both automatic abilities. So Drain says when this card deals damage, you gain that much life. So if you have multiple instances of Drain, they all trigger once when you deal damage, so you'll gain like that much life times the amount of drains you have, essentially. And Limit, which is some Wanderer cards, I think, means whenever it comes into the field with that number of limit counters on it. And it also means whenever this card attacks or blocks, remove a limit counter from this card. So if you gave that card multiple instances of limit, whenever it attacks or blocks, it'll lose how many limit counters you have times limit, essentially. And the other three don't really have any that sort of effect. Like it's just a static yes or no. Like you're either flying or you're not. Like you can't be like level 3 flying, You've either got Pierce or you don't. You've either got Bloodlust or you don't, because they're all just continuous effects.
Is it true that they still technically stack? There's just no functionality in them, but they technically are stacking.
You still technically have multiple instances of flying, but it just doesn't affect the functionality whether you have 1 or you have 300 instances of flying.
It'd be cool if you did. Like, I think someone on the Facebook group was saying, like, "Oh, I fly over your flying because I'm flying 5 times higher."
Double flying.
Yeah.
Double flying. So he just flies higher. Yeah.
Next up, which of the following cards are legal for Andy to play if he has no non-magic stone cards in his field, and his opponent, Nicole, only has Scarlet and magic stones in their field. Intervention of Reality with 5 revealed stones, and that's the story card that says like draw a card, destroy target addition, and then it does other stuff.
Yeah, it does something else.
Soul Concentration, which is put like 2 or 3 mystery counters on your...
I think it's 3.
3 on your J/Ruler or buff it or something like that. Null Darkness with no cards in hand, which is destroy target Resonator, and then it has Null, destroy target J-Ruler, and an Encounter with Cthulhu, which each player banishes a non-Cthulhu Resonator.
Yep, so correct answers were B and D. So Intervention of Reality says destroy target addition. So the legend text is like additional, so it has all of its text, and because it requires you to target an addition to play it, and neither player has an addition, you won't be able to play the card at all because you can't fulfill that targeting requirement. Soul Concentration can just put mystery counters on your J/Ruler, so you can just use that whenever. Null Darkness does not work because it requires you to target a Resonator, so same logic as Intervention there. If you can't target a Resonator, you can't play the card because Null is also additional text. And an Encounter with Cthulhu you can play because it doesn't have any sort of targeting requirements for Resonators, and so you can play it, and then you just fulfill as much of the text as you can. So each player banishes Resonator, they don't have any, so you don't do it, essentially. But you're still able to play the card, which is same for stuff like Burgeoning Despair. Like I've seen quite a few questions on Facebook about that. It just targets the player, and then, it doesn't target 2 Resonators. It just says your opponent banishes 2 Resonators. So you just fulfill as much of that as you can.
Yeah, it's not like destroy 2 target Resonators, or like Mosasaurus, where it rests 3 target magic stones. If your opponent only has 2 revealed, you have to target one of yours as well. You have to, unless it says up to or anything like that, you have to fulfill the full requirement. And if during the resolution, like say your opponent banishes the Resonator in response, then it's still legal now, but you just do as much as you can on the card now. Yeah,
and just because Encounter with Cthulhu doesn't target any Resonators, it's still legal.
Yeah.
You just do as much as you can.
Yeah. Next one. Which of the following actions is legal? Calling a stone, recovering your ruler with Hoel Pig, which it says banish this card, recover your ruler. And then judgmenting using Flame Horse to give yourself swiftness and then calling a stone. Doing a judgment process using High Speed Dash to return your J-Ruler back, and then calling stone. High Speed Dash is return your J-Ruler back to its ruler side. I forget the exact wording. I really like that card.
Something like that. That was cool. That was a fun card.
Yeah, I forget exactly. I had some sort of combo I did with what ruler? I know I used it with Sylvia, but I feel like there's another one I did a cool thing with.
Oh, that would have been good with Sylvia. Yeah, anything that has like a cool enter effect in your ruler, and then you just flip it back and then flip it over to J-Ruler again.
Yeah.
Good combos with that, but... so correct answer was A. I thought this was a pretty good question. It's a little bit of a rules, not really a loophole, but it's, just specifics in how the game works. So if you want to call a stone, the rules for calling a stone say you can't have played Judgment previously in the turn, but the rules for doing Judgment just say that you have to have a recovered ruler. It doesn't say anything about whether you call a stone or not, because typically you rest your ruler to call a stone. So normally you aren't able to do the Judgment because you need to have a recovered ruler. But if you're able to recover the ruler somehow, say with Hoel Pig, you are able to call a stone, recover it, and then do Judgment after. So that's how that one works.
Yeah, it's a handy trick, and it's also good to know so that that's something that would happen commonly, and your opponent will most likely be like, you can't do that. That doesn't make any sense. And so it's a tricky. Yeah. It's a very specific order of things you can do in order to make it work.
Yeah, and it normally never comes up with a lot of players because you think it's just either one or the other. You just call a stone or a Judgment, or you do nothing. But because normally you aren't able to do both of them during the turn. But through cards like Hoel Pig that specifically recover your ruler. It lets you do stuff like that.
Or it works with the water dragon, not water dragon, the one that lets you call a stone.
Yeah, the Flute's water dragon.
Flute's water dragon. So you're able to do something similar that the people had discovered a while back, where you just call a stone and then judgment, because it uses that process as well. Next one. Which of the following cards would Cheshire Cat, Guide to the Mysterious World, gain keyword skills from if they were in a removed area and removed by Cheshire? So this was one we definitely were unsure about. So the options are either Red Riding Hood, Rainbow to the Heavens, which has Seal of 3, and it gains swiftness and flying, and it says 3 magic stones are revealed. Prokaryotic Being, which gains a bunch of stuff depending on what cards are in your graveyard or something like that. Sylvia the Slave Girl, where if there's enough counters on her, or a counter on her, she gains flying and
she gets a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, a bunch of stuff. And then Statue in the Sacred Temple, which can create a 1,000,000 angel with flying.
Yeah, so the correct answer for this one is E. She doesn't get any of these skills.
Cool.
And so because all of the skills on these cards are gained by abilities, the only way those abilities can actually be active is if the card's in the field. So because all these cards would be removed from game, none of their effects are able to be active. So they don't actually have those symbol skills. So Cheshire Cat isn't able to get them.
Okay. Yeah, so that was my my initial thought, but like the thing that was stumbling me was I'm pretty sure people weren't playing it like that at our locals. So I think that's what threw me off in my head.
It's definitely something. It's another one of those ones where there's a lot of questions that get asked about it because, you think, oh, well, Red Riding Hood has the because I have 3 stones, so Cheshire is able to steal them. But it's not, because it's a continuous effect that the card has to be in the field in order to actually get the symbol skills, which it's not getting if it's removed from the game.
Yeah.
So essentially the Cheshire Cat only gets the keyword skills if it's just like a straight keyword skill that's just printed on the card normally.
Yeah. All right. Hopefully that type of interaction comes up again one day, because that's a very specific type of...
Yeah, it's very specific. A lot of Wanderer cards, but yeah.
Next up, if Andy controls Neo Barrier of Shadows, which... so that's the field card where your opponent pays 1 void more to play activate abilities, and then once you get 8 stones, it unlocks its seal, which your opponent can't play non-will activate abilities, and it still keeps its previous effect as well. So they have that, and 8 magic stones, which the following statements are accurate about cards controlled by his opponent. A, Sacred Elf's ability will cost 1 void more to activate, but Nicole can still use it. B, Nicole will not be able to banish Spirit Stone to draw a card. C, Nicole will not be able to banish Majin Stone to produce 2 Fire Will. D, Fiery Fox of Reincarnation's activate ability will cost 1 to activate, but Nicole will be able to use it still. And E, Nicole will not be able to call Stone through the ability of Flute's Water Dragon. And this is a situation where it took me a couple reads just because of the whole negative wording and stuff like that. I had to reread.
Like what's true, and then you got a bunch of stuff that says it's not going to happen. So you got to think of it.
Yeah.
But so essentially a will ability is defined as an activate ability that has no targets and produces some sort of will as part of the effect. And will abilities can't be chased, and because the seal ability on Neo Barrier of Shadows specifies that they just can't activate non-will activate abilities. So the correct answers were A and B. So Sacred Elf's ability is a will ability, so the second part of Neo Barrier doesn't apply, but the first part still does. So she'll still be able to use Sacred Elf's ability, but it costs 1 void to activate as well. B is also correct, because Spirit Stone's activate ability isn't considered a will ability because it doesn't produce any will. So Nicole won't be able to use that. Nicole can, so then C, D, and E are both false, So Nicole can still use Margin Stone to produce 2 fire because that's considered a will ability. Fiery Fox of Reincarnation's activate ability doesn't produce any will, so it's not considered a will ability. Wait, no, I'm confusing myself. Gosh, see, the wording just trips me up. So it doesn't. She can't use it at all. So it's false. She can't use it at all because it's not considered a will ability. And Flute's Water Dragon isn't an activate ability at all. It's just a continuous effect that lets you use it to call a stone instead of your ruler. So that isn't affected at all by Neo Barrier.
All right.
Oh, got there. Yeah, I mean, like the wording, like even just reading it now, and I know they're correct, and I'm just like, I can't read.
Yeah, no, you had said the answer, because I'd got, I know I'd answered this right, but like, you'd said A and B, and I was like, oh, really? I thought it was this other one, so I like reread the question. I was like, oh, wait, no, that was, it has to be correct that she can't do that, and, yeah,
see, because the first 3 are like saying she won't be able to do it, but then the D says she can do it, so it's false. It's like, That's a really wordy question. I bet a lot of people just got caught up on the wording there.
Yeah, I feel like
I think if you saw it in a game situation, you'd be able to recognize it pretty easily. I think for a lot of people, but just when you're reading it and you're thinking about all the cards and the wording's a bit confusing, I think a few people would have gotten tripped up on this one.
Yeah, it'd be cool if it maybe like just showed pictures of the cards and just said which of the. I guess that won't work, but something like to the effect of which of these activated abilities can you and can't you use, and you just check mark which ones you can or something like that.
Yeah, that would have been cool. But,
19. If Alice's World of Madness is on the field and Andy plays and resolves Rapid Growth on a Leaf Guard, so Rapid Growth gives something +6/+6, and Leaf Guard is a 4/9, I believe, or 4/7, and then Nicole plays and resolves a Water Transformation Magic, which says target Resonator loses all abilities and becomes a 4/4 bear. On the same Leaf Guard, what is Leaf Guard's attack and defense? So the important thing was that they play and resolve Rapid Growth, and then they play and resolve Water Magic while World Madness is on the field. So is it going to be 2/2, 4/4, 6/6, or 8/8?
Right, so Leaf Guard starts off as a 4/8. So all these effects would be applied. So in Force of Will, if you have multiple effects that are trying to modify the attack and defense of a Resonator, they get applied in the order that they were played in, essentially. So you'd have the Leaf Guard on the field. It would get -2/-2 from Alice's World of Madness. Then it gets +4/+4 from Rapid Growth. And then it just becomes a 4/4 from the Water Transformation Magic. So it ends up as a 4/4, so B is the correct answer. But yeah, because it just all gets applied in the order that the cards were resolved, essentially.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, and this is one that people, when Charlotte's Water Transformation Magic came out, there's a lot of questions about that. But essentially it just completely overwrites anything beforehand and it just becomes a 4/4.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's kind of like took a while for people to catch on exactly what it could do, but like at the end of the day, it's technically really straightforward what it can do. It's just like it's always a 4/4 once it resolves.
Yeah,
like,
and especially when you consider like additions, like Alice's World of Madness, it does seem like a bit unintuitive at times that that -2 happens before it becomes a 4/4.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And last question. Which of the following scenarios would a player need to make public the card he or she is searching for? Playing Fated Reunion and choosing both options, which the first option is search your deck for a card, put it on top of your deck, and the second option is to draw a card. B, using Guardia, the Guardian Dragon of Heaven's Enter ability. That's everyone's favorite card. I don't even have to say what that does.
That's an old card.
Basically, it's search your deck for a card. C, using Rachel's Leave the Field automatic ability, which is when it leaves the field, you search your deck for a card. Put put in your hand, and D, using Awaken Planted Beans, which Planting Beans is search your deck for a card, put it in the graveyard, and if it's Awakened, then you put it from the graveyard into your hand.
Right, so the correct answer is just D. Faded Reunion just says search for card, put it on top of the deck. It doesn't say you have to reveal it. And because it's just moving from hidden zone to a hidden zone, you don't have to reveal it. So hidden zone, by the way, is just something where your opponent or you or both of you don't know the cards there. So because it moves just from the deck to the deck, essentially, you don't have to reveal it at all. Gardea, which is from all the way back in Grim Cluster, just says search your Magic Stone deck for a card and then shuffle the rest of your deck and put that card on top of it. So same sort of logic there, because it's just moving from the stone deck to the stone deck, and the ability doesn't say you have to reveal it. You don't have to show your opponent at all. Rachel's ability, same thing. When you leave the field, search your deck for a card, put it to your hand, which are both hidden zones. And because it doesn't say you have to reveal it, you don't have to reveal it. But Awaken's Planting Beans is slightly different, because it says search your deck for a card, put it into the graveyard, and then if you awaken it, then put it into your hand. Because it passes through a public zone, which is the graveyard, it means your opponent's able to see it while it's in the graveyard for that, split second. So you do have to actually show them what it is, even though the card doesn't say anything about revealing, because it moves through a public information area. You do have to technically show them what it is.
Yeah. All right. So that was all 20 questions. I think that was pretty in depth, and hopefully it will be really helpful and informative for people.
I hope it helps some of you understand, maybe some of the rulings behind it.
So what were your overall thoughts on that? You say you want to take the L0 to see how it was. So what were your thoughts on the L0 test?
I think it was pretty good. Like, as you guys were saying in the video, I think there was just, too much Wanderer information in the test. I think especially for an L0 test, which is, just a qualification to judge at locals, essentially. The vast majority of locals are just going to be playing New Frontiers. And I think that, they could have done a lot more questions based on new cards that people will actually see.
Yeah, that was one thing I was saying, is one of our most viewed videos of the past, couple months is just a video explaining how runes and divinity works. It's something that a lot of people are confused about, and so I was surprised not to see anything on there, because we're going to have a bunch of judges who are going to be official L0 judges who don't know anything about New Dawn Rises.
Yeah, I think they easily could have put in, at least 2 questions about runes, especially since it's going to be such a large mechanic for this whole next year. Like, this whole cluster is just going to be focusing around these rune and divinity rulers. I think there definitely could have been some questions about that. I really would have liked to see that in the test.
Yeah, hopefully.
And even just some new cards as well. Instead of, you've got stuff like this Gardea card from all the way back in Grim Cluster. Maybe get something more relevant.
There's not because I can think of 3 cards, 2 of which are rune cards that are search your deck for a card, put it in your hand. So I don't know why they grabbed a Grim card when it's just trying to translate the search your deck for a card and stuff, or using either 2 or 3 completely banned cards and stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of banned cards, stuff that's just rotated, all that sort of stuff. I think they're just some more questions focused on current cards. And even though I do understand Force of Will just wants to test game knowledge, which can then be applied to any situation, I think you easily could have tested it with new cards as well.
Yeah, it's like if you're just doing that, the search one, you could easily use a New Frontiers card. This is L0. All L0s are going to play as New Frontiers, or maybe a Cluster. Seems to be actually coming out of the woodwork now. And so it felt weird for it. A lot of these questions I think are 100% good for L1 and above, because it involves just straight up interactions. It's like doing math problems that have no relevance to the real world, but it's good to know because it helps solve other types of problems and stuff. But none of these lend themselves to knowing how divinity works. So
that's why. Totally agree with you there. I would have loved to see some questions. I mean, they could have, first of all, could do like, separate tests for Wanderer and New Frontiers if they really want to test people on all this Wanderer stuff. Like there's like stealth mechanics in that test. You've got all that sort of stuff. And I mean, I think you easily could have maybe split into 2 tests if you really wanted to, and then you could have all New Frontier questions, that one, and then maybe have like a Wanderer test as well, or just focus on the main format, which is New Frontiers.
Yeah. No, because I'm sure a lot of people, because we have a lot of new players and stuff, so there's probably a lot of people really excited to take the test, and so they might have studied up on the CR, watched a bunch of videos, and then came in and just didn't know what they were talking about. But,
yeah, I think like there's probably like one. I feel like you can probably count on one hand like the number of Frontier cards in this test.
Oh yeah. And you can count on no hands the amount of New Dawn Rises cards in there.
Yeah. It's like, I was looking through all the images I've got. There's like 5, 6, 7. There's about 8. And then some of them are banned, like Scheherazade, all that sort of stuff is all banned.
Yeah, and the card that goes with Sherry was talking about and stuff. Or no, I guess that's not banned, but it's the most useless card in the history of the game now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, all right. So
I mean, I think you're.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think a couple of the questions might have been a little too in depth, maybe for level 0. I don't think stuff maybe like that end of days question. Probably maybe a little bit too in depth, especially since it's not something you can actually like tell from the CR. I think maybe that was a bit too complex, and maybe stuff like Keys' Call, that question.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Yeah, because I don't think there was that many people that actually passed. I think the pass rate was
based on how many people I think took it, and seeing that pretty small list of how many people passed it. Yeah, that definitely didn't feel right. I was thinking it's going to be like almost a person a state at minimum that would pass, if not more. And so the fact that we have like that small of a spread,
and I mean, if you consider that a large number of the players on this passing list, including myself, aren't actually from the US. I think this L0 thing is mainly just a US qualification. I think they were saying like Europe, it doesn't mean anything. Like I'm already an L1, so it doesn't mean anything for me personally, but the list gets even smaller once you take out people from other regions.
Yeah, or people like Ryan Mouse, who's probably never going to judge anything.
Yeah,
probably just take it.
Yeah, probably won't judge, but you got people who are just sort of taking it just cause. But I don't think if at Ryan's locals, I don't think people are going to question him.
He doesn't need the official badge, and even Ryan Miles got an 84 on the test. So I was like, well, something's a little wonky going on there. But at least I seen Ryan get an 84. I don't know what score I got, but it made me feel not as bad for not passing. So.
Yeah, but overall, I think it was pretty good. There was just maybe a handful of questions that maybe slightly too complicated, and then just less Wanderer stuff would be fantastic.
There's some that are just like, as we were talking about, are just like, it would probably be okay questions. I just feel like they could have been worded way better, and it's got the same point across.
Yeah, some of the wording wasn't too great. So.
But yeah, we'll go ahead and wrap up there. Thanks you guys for listening. Let us know what you guys think in the comments below, especially if you made it all the way to the end here. It's a lot of rules and stuff to go over there, but I think it's very beneficial, and a lot of these might be common questions, especially if you guys don't play New Frontiers and stuff. So you can always use this video as a reference guide. And stuff, but yeah.
And always, if you have any questions, just check out the judge. There's a judge questions page on Facebook where you can just.
I'll try to remember to put that in the description below, the link to that page, in case you guys aren't in it. They're always pretty quick on responding there. Like, I'll be judging a tournament and maybe something will come up, and I'll just post in there real quick, and they usually respond within a couple minutes and stuff.
Yeah, especially during like normal US times. There'll be a lot of people who just get notifications on that, and you'll have like proper judges answering questions and stuff, and they can give you all the references for that. It's a really handy resource, especially if you're maybe not too familiar on a bunch of the more complex scenarios.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, Ronan. And
No worries. Thanks
really...
for having me on.
Oh, yeah. And thanks you guys for watching. And we'll see you guys later.
Yeah, thanks, guys.